Hello and welcome or welcome back to the Customer Success Festival. I hope you're enjoying today's presentations. Just a quick reminder that you can join fellow attendees in our Slack community. Just follow the link at the top of the event website. And now, on to our next speaker.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining our presentation. We'll be sharing our 2021 Customer Success Insights Report. I'm Josh Schachter. I'm the CEO of Update AI. Previously, I was a general manager at Boston Consulting Group's Digital Ventures and ran products at companies like Intuit, eHarmony, and the NFL. So I want to start with a bit of reflection. I want you to think, as a CSM or a team leader, what some of the key challenges are that you face in your day-to-day. Is it back-to-back Zoom meetings? Perhaps it involves multitasking, communicating on multiple channels and tools. Maybe it relates to your interactions with the internal team that you work with, making sure you're all on the same page, or your external adjacent teams, like product or design. Now I want you to think about a customer success oasis. This is a place of customer success, perfection, and joy. There's three parts of this oasis. The first is where we interact with the customer. Our interactions are seamless and smooth. We're present at all times. The next part is where we interact with our internal teammates. We're all on the same page. We're all swimming, rowing against the same currents. There's coordination, but not too much coordination. And we all know that we have each other's backs. We're all measured against the same metrics. And the third part is where we interact with our external adjacent teams within our organization. They get us. They understand our role. They balance our role. They support us. And most importantly, they appreciate us for all that we do in driving the relationship with the customer and relaying the voice of the customer. Update AI is building towards that oasis. We are a simple, delightful meeting tool for customer success professionals. We help with things like smart agendas for recurring meetings and one-off meetings. Automated note-taking of action items so you can stay present in the conversation. Automated recaps of meetings so you can show instant accountability to your client or customer and get things over internally to stakeholders as well. And everything is completely integrated into our workflow, into your existing workflow. We're currently accepting additional pilot customers on our wait list, and look out for us for our public release later this spring. But let's move on to the goals of this session. The first and most important is that we want to present the results and insights from our 2021 Customer Success Industry Report. Within that, we'll identify common frictions facing teams and managers. And lastly, we'll share a 3Ps process for building the most effective customer relationships. For that section, I'm joined by two esteemed colleagues and experts in the field, Nils Vinja and Katarina Schmidt, and you'll meet them momentarily. The first thing you should know about the report is how it was created. The ingredients include the following. We conducted a survey earlier this winter with over 250 participants and respondents across CSMs and team leads. About 3/4 were CSMs and 1/4 were team leaders. We also included the results of over 20 research interviews, qualitative Zoom conversations that we had with folks in the field. Our learning objectives were simple. It was to understand what our process as CS teams is, what frictions we face, and what trends we are most interested in. And it included companies represented like Mixpanel, PlanView, Intuit, and others. And I really want to take a moment here to tell those folks who participated in the surveys and the interviews how grateful we are for your participation. We started out with talking about our favorite tools. And despite a rich set of options, when it comes to basic software needs, we keep it simple with Google. So in terms of video conferencing, the primary tool that folks prefer to use or do use, it was a tie between Google Meet and Zoom. It was actually a bit surprising for us that Zoom wasn't the leader, but we're seeing lots of traction and uptick in Google's adoption. That was followed by Microsoft Teams, and we know that they've been increasing their presence in productivity, WebEx, Slack, and then a couple of other long tail folks. When it comes to note-taking, Google Docs also rules the roost, followed by direct note-taking into the CRM system of choice, whether that's Salesforce, HubSpot, Gainsight, and then a smattering of other note-taking apps and tools. And in terms of project management, so once we've had the meetings, we've taken the notes, now where do we apply those tasks and action items? Google Sheets was still the predominant player, followed by a more even distribution of some of the flurry of recent task management platforms and tools that we've seen, like Monday.com, Teamwork, Jira, ClickUp, and others. And the overriding theme is that 72% of us believe there are too many tools and communication channels. Next, we wanted to understand what are the types of sessions that we're hosting as CS teams with our clients. This was also a fairly uniform distribution. 75% of us host recurring check-ins, whether those are weekly, monthly, or on a different cadence. 65 host executive and quarterly business reviews. 64 host troubleshooting sessions. 63 host product demos and training sessions. And then 61% of teams host onboarding sessions. Within that, we wanted to understand what are the features that are desired in a tool to make these meetings more seamless with better outcomes. The top ranked feature across customer success managers was more automated note-taking to enable them to stay more present. That was followed closely by having better accountability for meeting follow-ups, both assigned to ourselves and to others. When it came to team leaders, the number one feature desired was very prominent and very easily displayed. And that was signaling the riskiest customers to help team leaders know when and where to intervene in their client book and their overall team portfolio, and to help them prioritize that intervention. That was followed by helping them create a scorecard to help train and evaluate CSMs, allowing them to access a recap of client meetings, and helping them report team success metrics upwards. As we went down the list here in ranked order, the last feature was the ability to access the raw transcript and audio of client meetings. This was a little bit ironic and surprising because there's been such a prevalence of people using tools like Chorus, Otter, and Gong over the past year. And in fact, 50% of respondents said that they used Chorus, 50% said that they or a teammate or another team used Otter, and the same of Gong, respectively. So there's been this big prevalence and growth in the usage of those tools. They're primarily used for these reasons. The top reason is to review a prior meeting that we ourselves were in to go back after. That's followed by receiving or giving coaching feedback, followed by getting notifications when key terms are flagged, reviewing prior meetings we were not in, sharing meeting snippets with others, and receiving insights about the meeting. That was the last ranked. We think there's something gone wrong, though, because upon every conversation that we had directly with many of these stakeholders, we heard the same theme, that nobody has time to go back to watch replays of meetings. So there's this really interesting contrast between the tools that we're currently using in this sense versus the blatant needs that we're recognizing. Next, we sought to understand how teams are measured. And more than ever, we as customer success teams and as individuals are assessed by our revenue metrics, by things like customer retention, upsell, cross-sell, and customer LTV. This may not come as any surprise, but this trend has been growing recently. And the key takeaway is that we now have more and more responsibility for that customer relationship. And so it's upon us as an industry to find more and more ways to gain a seat at the table of influence within our organizations. We asked team leaders what some of their greatest challenges were in managing their teams. And we took those responses and clustered them into three main areas. The first was teaming, and that divided into two subtopics, team building and coordination. Team building, folks talked about this idea of wanting their team to find more of an overall team consciousness and common ground. When it came to coordination, there was a consistent theme around a lack of coordination. Next was productivity. Tools are a major affliction for us, especially during this time. We're Zoom fatigued. There's too many tools, and there's inconsistent use of tools. We have so much on our plates that we don't have enough capacity. And so that's something that we need to manage. The third area was our interactions within the broader organization, namely our upward stakeholdering of executives, helping the rest of the org get a better picture of our roles and the definition of those roles and really what we do and making sure that that's balanced. And then getting buy-in and support from other teams like product development, who should be there and need to be there to listen to our voice of the customer and help us iterate on serving a better product. So with this, we wanted to understand, what do folks in the industry really want to learn more about? This, of course, is helpful for this presentation, but also because there's a huge amount and a growing amount of content within customer success these days. The first and most important item was that people want to understand how to strengthen the client relationship. That was followed by knowing how to run more consistent CS team processes, how to best engage and win influence within the rest of the organization, how to use success metrics and benchmark against ourselves and against our competitors, and to really understand what success is, how to most effectively use our CS toolkits, and lastly, how to capture and convert sales opportunities. So armed with that information, we'd like to present to you our 3Ps formula for strengthening the customer relationship through better process. The first P is for prescription. And my friend and an absolute expert in the field of customer success, Niels Vinje, will help present us a prescriptive approach to take. I'll talk about preparation, and Katarina Schmidt, who is a leadership coach, will talk about presence, how to stay present in your conversations with your customers, clients, and internal stakeholders. Niels, over to you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Wonderful to be with you all to talk prescription. My name is Niels Vinje. I'm a top 25 influencer in customer success, and I'm the founder and CEO of Glide Consulting. So why is prescription so powerful when it comes to engaging with customers? Well, let's take a look at a tale of two lawyers. Let's say you're in a situation where you need to have a contract drawn up to enter into an agreement with a third party. You talk to your friends, you explain the context, you get referrals to two very qualified lawyers. You explain your situation to each lawyer, and here's how each one responds. Lawyer one responds with, yeah, I've designed contracts just like that. What do you want covered in the contract? It's reasonable. Okay, lawyer two responds with, yes, I've developed contracts exactly like you're describing. In my experience, there are 5 things you absolutely must cover, and then there's an additional 3 that I think could be applicable to you. What I recommend is that I walk you through the 5 so you understand them, and then we discuss the 3 and make sure we get the right balance of what you need in the contract. How does that sound? Which lawyer would you choose? I've asked this question to thousands of people by now, and the resounding answer is always lawyer 2. And why is that? Well, we want to be led. We recognize that other people have expertise that we don't have, and we want to be led by those experts so that we get to the right place. Now think of this from a client engagement perspective, and let's look at how a lawyer 2 kind of approach would work with clients. And there are a couple key areas that we can bring into this that I want to highlight for you here. The first area is what I call the transformation. Clients do not sign up for a solution or a product or a service or anything without expecting some form of transformation. However, they don't know everything they don't know. And so it is your job as the provider in order to articulate to yourselves, and usually with the client as well, what the transformation is that they're going to experience over time working with your product or solution. So if you don't have this destination where you're going defined, ultimately any road is going to get you to wherever you're trying to go, which is nowhere. So it's really important to have clarity on exactly what the transformation is the client is going to achieve by the end of their time working with you, or by the end of the contract period that they have set up with you, so that you can ensure that you have the highest likelihood of renewing that contract and hopefully expanding it. Now, if we know what the target end goal is for our client, let's go all the way back to the beginning to what I call is the fresh start. A lot of people call this onboarding, and I call this a fresh start for a very specific reason. There will never be more energy, excitement, and enthusiasm working with a client than right at the point at where they sign up and agree to engage with you for your product or solution. And the reason is they are ready, they're eager, they're willing, and they're open. So we have to do a couple of key things in this fresh start. Number one, we have to capture that enthusiasm and excitement. And number two, we have to set expectations for what's going to happen right now. And number three is we have to set expectations for how we're going to continue to engage after the fresh start period is over in a meaningful, value-driving way over time. This is one of the biggest changes that makes, or smallest changes that makes the biggest impact with the clients that I've worked with. When we set expectations for what's going to happen in the next phase, it tees it up and makes everything easier. So the next phase is called the engaging middle. This takes off from where the fresh start ends and goes all the way on the engagement with the client, well beyond the renewal into year 2, year 3, year 4, etc. And I call this engaging middle because it has to 100% be engaging. You cannot spend all your time and effort in the fresh start, do all this training, get the client up to speed, and then not have a plan for how you're going to engage with them post onboarding. It just doesn't work. It forms a black hole, and that is where the decisions will be made about whether or not to continue working with your product or solution. So the engaging middle is where you have to script and prescribe exactly what you are going to do and exactly how you're going to provide value over time, so that ultimately we all make progress towards our defined milestones. Nothing says progress like having defined milestones and checking them off the list. So if we can get to the point where we know, here's the transformation we're trying to achieve, here's what we're doing in the fresh start, and here's how the engaging middle is going to go, so that every step of that process, we are going to be checking things off our defined milestones list and making sure that we know when our clients are on track or off track. Now, all these 5 things that we just talked about, the element of being prescriptive, the transformation, the fresh start, the engaging middle, and the defined milestones are what I call the 5 things your customer strategy must have. And if you'd like to learn more or see some examples of this in action, you can download my free PDF called The 5 Things Your Customer Strategy Must Have at glideconsultingllc.com/blueprint. Thank you so much for your time. And Josh, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Niels. That was great. I've attended Niels' workshops firsthand, and I can tell you that they are absolutely amazing. Now let's talk about preparation, our second P. We all know the feeling of when we're prepared, and we all know the fuzzy feeling when we're not prepared. I love this quote, that spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. And I want to talk about preparation as it manifests to preparing for our meetings and creating and using meeting agendas. Here's the current worldview, and this is what we learned in speaking to many of you about meeting agendas. We do them, but they're a chore. They're a burden. We generally create them and set them and forget them. We don't go to update them, even when they're recurring meetings often. They're created unilaterally, i.e. by the meeting organizer, generally without the input or feedback of attendees. And the value of a meeting agenda is usually before the meeting, either emailed out before the meeting and then we never use them in the meeting, or just flash at the beginning of the meeting. So let's talk about the worldview and the better way that we at Update AI believe we should share. This is a view where meeting agendas are seamless. They float from meeting to recurring meeting, helping you stay on track. They're dynamic, they're updated as they need to be. They're collaborative, they take the input not only of ourselves, but of our peers and external attendees. And they're used before, during, and after the conversation. There's some great research from Professor Steven Robelberg and others that shows that meeting agenda creation and usage is the number one factor of perceived meeting effectiveness. And how amazing would it be if all of our clients and customers perceived that every meeting we had was incredibly effective? I'm happy to share with you a link to this research. Again, just email me, josh@update.ai. I want to share with you our plans and what we're building for smart agendas on Update. We imagine a world where they're used at the very beginning and even before the meeting. Imagine where you're in a Zoom waiting room, but instead of seeing a loading spinner, you see the agenda instead. You see the outcomes from the previous meeting you were in together and the statuses of those action items. You see the topics for discussion on the right side, or definitions of what success means for this meeting. Then you enter the meeting. During the meeting, on the left rail here, you can see action items and notes that are clustered by meeting topic. So we know that we've captured everything in each of the categories that we set out to talk about. Before we end the meeting, or right at the end of the meeting, before we exit the platform, we review the takeaways. We make sure nothing was missed, that no topic was omitted. And then after the meeting, we can go back into our notes, into meeting minutes, and we can see all of those notes divvied out by agenda topic. We think that this would be a much more effective way to create agendas, to use agendas, and ultimately will yield much more perceived effectiveness of meetings and a much more impressed client outcome. Now I'd like to hand it over to my friend and peer, Katharina Schmidt, who's going to talk about presence.
Thank you, Josh and Nils. So let us be present to the third P for presence in our customer success interactions. I'll share one insight and two practices that you'll be able to apply right away to create more presence. The first one we all experience daily. It's people who almost magically give us energy or deplete us from it. And those are the most prevalent examples of emotional contagion in daily life. We catch each other's moods. And the concept of emotional contagion is especially relevant for customer encounters because the mood of a customer success coworker is contagious to customers and their experience of our service. So does that mean that we always have to be upbeat and happy? It does not, because that wouldn't be human. So the question is, how can we set up our emotional state and contagiousness towards positivity? Maybe you think, I will just teach my customer success coworkers how to smile a lot so that they become positively contagious. That is a good start, but it's not the whole equation. Research shows that the authenticity of employees' emotional state and how it's displayed affects customers' emotional states. And contrary to expectations, that research shows that the extent of employees smiling does not influence customer emotions as much. So you might think, so what if I'm not having a great day? So there is a practice to somehow neutralize our own emotions when they are not naturally positive. And the practice is called affect labeling in science, and there's solid research behind it. It's about putting your sometimes disturbing feelings into words, with yourself, with others, and that practice dampens brain activity in the emotional centers of the brain and frees resources to be mentally present. I remember when my kids went to preschool, the teacher would always tell them, use your words when they were upset. So in order to optimize your own presence continually, put your feelings into words at various times during the day, for example, before a meeting or when you go to the bathroom. And for most of us, that is not easy because we don't have the language and we're primed to suppress our feelings, which actually increases the amount of energy or activation in the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. So this needs practice. Now let's go to the second practice. What if we're not able to put our feelings into words in a certain moment and we're not feeling super well? So this is your brain on oxygen therapy, before, after, and you have a tool to regulate this. Your own breath can be the access to this oxygen therapy to regulate the amount of oxygen present in your brain, which influences your presence right away. We breathe about 20,000 times a day, 14 to 20 breaths per minute. You always have your breath with you, no equipment or investment needed. The most basic of things we do each day. And yet, maybe because breathing is so basic, most of us can improve it. When a person breathes shallowly, which many of us do because of the daily stress and delivery mode we're in, carbon dioxide accumulates inside the body, and that causes yawning. So there's one type of breath that specifically taps into our brain and enables us to be more present. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. Let's do it right now. Feel your feet on the floor. Straighten your back. If it's okay for you, close your eyes. Otherwise, look away from the screen and focus on your breath. And when you inhale, I invite you to inhale into the lower lungs first. That means your belly has to come out when you breathe in. For most of us, that feels awkward in the beginning. And when you exhale, bring your belly in first and breathe out much longer than you usually do. Let's do it for one time. Inhale, lower belly, belly comes out. Try to expand your rib cage a little bit, and then exhale longer than you usually do. As said, presence is a practice, like the other two ingredients for great customer success conversations. Putting your feelings into words and attention for your breath are research proven and highly effective for more presence. Just do it. And if you ever look for inspiration around presence and leadership, please follow me on LinkedIn. Happily and fully present, I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Kat. You always inspire me to take deep breaths. And that's a wrap. I want to thank you all very much for attending our presentation. We shared insights from our 2021 CS industry report, discussed our 3 Ps process, and I did a little plugging for Update AI. And on that note, remember to email me at josh@update.ai for a copy of this presentation, or if you want to join our waitlist for our pilot rollout as either an individual or a team. Thank you all very much, and we'd now love to take your questions.